Hello from Beit in Jerusalem. And we're once again with the history of Iranian Jews. In our last lecture, we discussed the history of the Jews under the Qajars, and we focused on the Al-Adadi incident in Mashhad. Discussing this event showed the inability of European Jewish organizations to help Mashhadi Jews in order to change their destiny as crypto-Jews, and it shows again the weakness of the Jewish community under the Qajars. Not only that, in some cases, the intervention of foreign powers, non-Jewish and Jewish ones, on behalf of the Iranian Jews, only encouraged anti-Jewish sentiments from local Muslim elements. Even so, the Iranian Jews continued asking their brothers outside of Iran to help them. 3 international Jewish organizations, such as Alliance Israélite Universelle, Anglo-Jewish Association, and Board of Deputies of British Jews, tried to insecure the rights of Iranian Jews and to protect them in anti-Jewish incidents. These Jewish organizations tried to help the Iranian Jews using their influence on Iranian rulers. During Nasser ad-Din Shah Qajar, one of the prominent kings of Qajar dynasty, traveled to Europe in 1873, Adolphe Carmier, the director of Alliance Israélite Universelle, had a meeting in Paris with him. Carmier presented the Iranian Shah with details of the problems Iranian Jews were facing and also got his approval to establish a school by Alliance in Iran. The first Alliance school opened in Tehran in 1898, 25 years after the contract with Nasser ad-Din Shah Qajar. Afterwards, schools were opened in other cities around Iran, as you can see in this slide. The Alliance network schools were considered the best schools in Iran. They played an important role in the integration of Iranian Jews into society and were the only place in Iran where boys, especially girls, could receive a modern Western education which gave them advantages over their Muslim surrounding. And we know from different interviews that even Muslims were eager to study in these schools. The early years of the 20th century were marked with the impact of Iran's first revolution, the Constitutional Revolution. The Constitutional Revolution led to the establishment of parliament in Iran and to the establishment of a constitutional monarchy. This constitution defined for the first time non-Muslims and Muslims as equal, in against to the Sharia laws defining Jews and other religious minorities as dhimmis, as we discussed last time. The Jews were granted a seat in the Iranian parliament, the Majlis. It should be mentioned that at first the seat was occupied by a Muslim after the Jewish representative was expelled. Regarding taxation, there was to be no distinction or difference among the people of Iran as written in the constitution, and legally the jizya tax was banned. However, other articles from the constitution called for preserving of the Muslim dhimma approach towards religious minorities. For instance, no one can attain the rank of minister unless he be a Muslim by religion. Indeed, the legal status of some religious minorities, Jews included, in the constitutional period improved compared to the legal status of Jews under Shiite laws. But it took some decades until a real change happened in their status. The next important change was the arriving news of the Balfour Declaration of 1917. This declaration constituted a major motivation for the establishment in 1919 of the Central Association of the Zionist Organization of Iran. This association's main mission was to connect the Jews of Iran with the World Zionist Organization, to function as a central body for all provincial Jewish communities, to address the persecution of the Jews, to assist Jews who intended to immigrate to then Palestine, and to improve education in Jewish schools. Zionist branches were opened in different locales, and by 1922 there were 27 branches throughout Iran. This is maybe the first time that there was a main organization to the all communities in Iran. Although all these stated reforms, around the time of Reza Khan's rise, and later Reza Shah, in 1925, the situation of the Jews was still usually gloomy. Reza Shah's rise to power started a new era for the Iranian people. The Shah was not motivated by positive attitude towards religious minorities, but all minorities indirectly benefited from his reforms. He favored a modern Iran, free of foreign influence, united and strong militarily. He opposed a nation of tribal groups and wanted one people, a people with well-developed historical and national consciousness founded on a culture whose sources lay mainly in pre-Islamic Iran. He tolerated no political activity or ideology with any association with a foreign country or group outside of Iran. As a result, communist and Zionist activities were forbidden in Iran under the rule from different reasons. During this period, the government blocked Jewish immigration to then Palestine. Zionist institutions in London and the Iranian foreign ministry engaged in heated arguments over the total ban on immigration to Palestine and on the use of Iranian soil by Russian Jews as a transit station on their way to Palestine. However, despite these difficulties, Iranian Jewish immigration never ceased. In September 1926, Reza Shah ordered the arrest of Shmuel Chaim, the head of the Iranian Zionist organization then, who strongly motivated Iranian Jews to emigrate to Palestine. Along with several officers in the Iranian army, he was accused of being a British spy and of involvement in a failed coup d'etat, and was executed by firing squad in December 1931. Under Reza Shah, the equal rights that were granted to members of the religious minorities by the Constitutional Revolution of 1906-1909 were enforced. The following social changes enabled Jews to rise in status and became more assimilated within the broader society. Despite the statutory change, the Muslim majority, except for a minority of westernized Iranians, continued to have a negative view of Iranian Jewry. The Reza Shah era witnessed the cancel of the discriminatory laws applying to Jews. Jews were accorded the right to serve in the Iranian military, as you could see in the slide, and to enroll in state schools. Jews started to leave the Jewish quarter, the mahalleh, and to live wherever they wished outside of the mahalleh, in Muslim neighborhoods. They had the right to hold government jobs and keep shops in the bazaars. They took advantage of the opportunity and opened shops in commercial areas outside of the Jewish quarters. Previously, a small number of Jews had opened their shops outside of the quarter in Tehran and in several provincial towns, but now this wave was stronger. Under Reza Shah, the trend gained greater momentum, leading to an improvement in economic situation of the Jews. Yet, despite the changes, when Reza Shah's reign ended, the majority of Iranian Jews were still poor. The new national identity had a profound impact on Jewish identity. While retaining their Jewish religious affiliation and identity, the Jews of Iran wished to perceive as Iranians and found it easier to assimilate in society, which emphasized secular nationalist values and symbols, namely Persian music, poetry, and literature. And they celebrated Iranian holidays. They took Iranian names and glorified the Iran's pre-Islamic past. Here you could see a pharmacist license. Jews mainly worked as pharmacists because of their knowledge in medicine, but you can see that still in this license it mentioned that this person is a Jew, Kalimi in Persian. So as you could see, the changes were slowly and it wasn't overnight that the Jews became equal to their Muslim neighbors. Iranian Jewry sought to become part of Iranian national stream, the inspiration for which lay in pre-Islamic Iran. Many Iranian Jews see themselves as citizens of Iranian territory for 2,700 years since the Assyrian exile, as we spoke in our previous lecture. Numerous Jewish Iranian public figures often repeat that Judaism constitutes the oldest religious minority in Iran and one of the settled there a millennium before the rise of Islam. It must also be noted that among the religious minority currently living in Iran, the Jews are the only minority of non-Iranian origin. Nevertheless, this fact does not dull the common historical memory shared by Iranian Jews and other Iranians. Many Iranian Jews emphasized Iran's majestic, distant past as an integral part of Jewish history. The link was achieved to a large extent during the Pahlavi period. Both Reza Shah and Muhammad Reza Shah, his son, tried to revive secular Iranian nationalism by pointing to its ancient glory that began with the rise of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Achaemenid Empire, thereby constituting a source of national pride and inspiration. They both worked to project continuity between the pre-Islamic period and their own reigns with regards to conceptions of the monarchy, symbols, and cultural values. Moreover, unlike other conquerors, Iran's ancient empires, Persian and Medians, are viewed positively in the Bible and the Talmud. Jewish secular nationalist Iranians labored to establish continuity between the pre-Islamic period and that of their own from the perspective of the monarchy, symbols, and cultural values. Jews identified with the national aspirations and values of Iran and integrated them into their Iranian Jewish identity. One of the more important links is found in the story of Cyrus, as we discussed, often represented as the Messiah, the survivor, the savior of the Jewish people, and even a Jew in the Judeo-Persian literary tradition, like the Ardashir Nameh, a Judeo-Persian epic by the Jewish poet Shahin that we also discussed. Cyrus the Great is represented as a Jewish king born of Queen Esther. The new national identity was a two-edged sword. However, given that the government's nationalistic policies generated xenophobic and at times even anti-Semitic sentiments. Following the changes in Iranian politics and opinion that interspersed in the 20th century, some of Iran's modern secular intellectuals were active in reconstructing a national Iranian identity based on the history of the Aryan race of ancient Iran. The name Iran, by the way, derives from the name Aryans. Iran is the land of the Aryans. This is the translation. They introduced these intellectual secular components that originated in the Iranian hypothesis and in universalistic philological research that began at the end of the 18th century as an offshoot of European eugenics. For this reason, some intellectuals degraded the Semite race, attacking both Arabs and Iranian Jews. Jews, who comprise Iran's oldest religious minority, were not considered ethnic Iranians. This brand of national consciousness created problems and tensions between the Jews and the racial conscious community in which they lived. Clearly, Iran's relations with Germany in the 30s, and which reached their peak during the Nazi period, helped cultivate a new attitude toward Jews based on racial perceptions. Iran's relations with Soviet Union and Great Britain led Reza Shah to strengthen his ties with Nazi Germany during the 1930s. Commercial and cultural intercourse between the two countries grew. There was a large influx of German engineers and technicians into Iran. Nazi radio and newspaper propaganda emphasized the common Aryan origin of these two people, while classifying the Jews as an inferior race and parasites of humanity. Many pan-Iranists cooperated with the Nazi, creating even greater tension between Jews and non-Jews in Iran. The German invasion of Russia and the German army's advance along the southern Russian front pleased some Iranian fascists who wished to get rid of Iran Jews while availing themselves of Jewish property. Anti-Jewish articles were published in Iranian media. Anti-Jewish sentiments went beyond religious prejudice and took on racist characteristics. However, upon the abdication of Reza Shah in 1941 and the military occupation of Iran by the Allies, his son, Mohammad Reza Shah, was crowned. During the occupation, 1941 to 1946, Iran experienced an especially dynamic political period. Over 20 political parties were founded, representing a broad spectrum of opinions and ideologies, ranging from the extreme left to the extreme right, and including the various religious groups. In Tehran, in the provinces, dozens of newspapers and weeklies appeared in which political opinions were freely expressed. This freedom of press enabled Jews to renew their Zionist activities. They founded clubs for cultural and pioneering activities, organized training and preparation for immigration to Palestine, and established newspapers and weeklies of their own. Iranian Jews were also active in Zionist organization that was established in Iran in the beginning of the 1940s. The movement accepted Jewish youth who wanted to immigrate to Palestine and join the kibbutzim. HaChalutz, the Jewish organization, opened branches outside of Tehran. In 1947, there were 15 branches of the movement, 3 of them in Tehran. Some 2,000 youth were members of the movement, of the Chalutz movement. The movement laid the foundation for the immigration of thousands of Jews from Iran to Israel in the 1950s. The Jewish Agency also opened a branch in Tehran to aid Jewish refugees from Poland. Iranian Jews came into contact with the Jewish embassy staff and Jewish soldiers serving in the Allied forces, which bolstered Iran's Jewish community activity and self-confidence. Many Iranian Jews extended aid to the Tehran children and to Jewish refugees from Russia and Poland on their way to Palestine in the 1940s. Despite the political ferment that characterized Iran during this period, Jews gradually refrained from joining political parties. An exception was the ideology Free-Willing Communist Tudeh Party, which attracted several hundred Jewish intellectuals from across the country. This intellectual published a number of Jewish communist-oriented periodicals. Some participated in underground meetings and public demonstrations, clashing at times with the police. A number of Jewish demonstrators participating in a violent protest in 1952 were arrested and given prison sentences of various lengths. These leftist Jews were also involved in Zionist activities. They saw no contradiction between the Jewish people's national aspiration and party ideology, which is those days supported the establishment of the State of Israel. So they were both communist and also Zionist, and they didn't see any contradictions between these two ideologies. Israel independence in 1948 created a delicate situation for Iranian Jewry. The Iranian government opposed the partition plan, and as did Iranian Muslims who were influenced by the Muslim clerics. One of the Ayatollahs tried even to recruit Iranian volunteers to join the Arab armies who waged war against Israel. But the Iranian government, refused to be directly involved in any war efforts. Posters in Tehran Bazaar called on Iranians not to buy from Jewish merchants back then. It should be mentioned that in 1948, the Iranian Jewish community numbered about 90,000 to 100,000 persons, with some 30% living in Tehran, the capital. The founding of the State of Israel led to an increase in the immigration of Jews from Iran. Between 1948 and 1953, approximately 1/3 of the total Jewish population in the country left Iran. It should be noted, however, that there was also the reverse immigration among Iranian Jews that returned to Iran in the 1950s. With the signing of the ceasefire between Israel and the neighboring Arab countries in 1949, there were signs of a change for a better attitude of the government and media towards Israel in Iran. The changes resulted from internal, regional, and global factors. In March 1950, the Iranian government decided to grant the State of Israel de facto recognition. Iran's diplomatic recognition of Israel had a major impact on Iranian Jews, both in terms of own self-image and in terms of the attitude of other Iranians towards them. Nevertheless, The premiership of Mohammad Mossadegh in the early 1950s brought another rise of anti-Jewish and anti-Israeli sentiment. During the oil crisis of 1953, the Iranian government, more attuned with the sentiments of the majority of the population who considered Israel as a creation of Western imperialism and therefore illegitimate. Mossadegh claimed that Iranian oil is a nationalist one, and therefore he opposed the influence of the Western powers. After the coup d'etat of 1953, when Mohammad Mossadegh tried to become the leader of Iran, there was a rumor that the Jewish delegate in the Majlis, Morad Aryeh, a Jewish member of the Jewish community, had funds delivered to Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi during his brief exile in Rome. Because of this coup d'etat, Reza Shah Pahlavi, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the son, left to Rome for a couple of days. These funds allowed the royal family, as this is the rumor, this is the narrative, to remain in Italy until they could safely return to Iran. So this narrative actually shows the link between the Jewish community to the Shah. And it was a main narrative that shows the loyalty of Iranian Jewish community to the Shah. The Shah trusted the loyalty of Iranian Jews, and the covenant between the Shah and his Jewish subjects were reinforced. The new political atmosphere created a potential bond for Jewish prosperity and freedom, but it also posed risks given the community's dependence on a single individual, the Shah. The formation of a highly centralized government by Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi enabled government control of the periphery and prevented local incitement against Jews. Iranian-Israeli relations were strong by the mid-1950s, and Pahlavi ties with the West gave the Iranian Jewish community a sense of security and freedom. These ties enabled a closer connection between Iranian Jewry and Jewish organizations such as American Joint, Otzar Torah, an American-based Jewish Orthodox institution, ORT, and Israeli organizations, among them the Jewish Agency for Israel. These organizations offered economic and cultural support to the Iranian Jews. The years of the Pahlavi dynasty, in particular the reign of Mohammad Reza Shah, are often considered a golden age for Iranian Jewry. The Israel-Shah-Jewish triangle reached its high point of goodwill in 1963, when the Shah declared his so-called White Revolution reform plan. The White Revolution's rapid modernization framework offered exceptional opportunities for Iran's Jewish community. On the other hand, the reform arose criticism on behalf of Muslim clerics, headed by Ayatollah Khomeini, against the reign itself. In every anti-regime demonstration, the name of Israel was reportedly raised, and also anti-Jewish proclamations often accompanied this demonstration. The Six-Day War in 1967 tensed relations even further between Muslims and Jews in Iran. The tense atmosphere during the Iran-Israel soccer game in the Asian Nations Cup in Tehran in May 1968, and afterwards left an impact on the Muslim-Jewish relations in the country. Some soccer players that visited Iran back then for the game told me that some of the Jewish members come to visit them in the hotel in Tehran and actually pledged them to lost the game because they were so afraid of anti-Jewish sentiment and what will happen if they'll win. You'll be surprised, but at the end, Israel lost in the match. Another crisis that aroused anti-Jewish hostility and tension, which usually remained beneath the surface during the Shah's time, erupted also following Arab military achievements during the Yom Kippur War in 1973. In the 70s, the Iranian regime released a new note to the market, and some claimed that on this note there was this, the symbol of the Star David, as you can see. And later on, it was told that this note was bound to be produced again. So, under Pahlavi rule, and mainly after Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, the economic status of Iranian Jews improved greatly. Iran's economy was booming in the mid-20th century. In one generation, Iranian Jewry made impressive steps, in large part due to its dynamic urban nature, which enabled it to participate fully in Iran's economic growth. Many Jews took advantage of this window of opportunity, abandoned their traditional crafts, and integrated in new branches in the economy. Westernization and secularization on the one hand, and imitation of members of the establishment and intellectual class on the other hand, led the new urban middle class in main cities of the country, especially in Tehran, to question the concept of impurity of infidels, the nejasat, if not to deny it altogether. The Jews were no longer viewed as infidels, mainly in urban areas, and mainly by the ruling elite or the intellectual. So this concept of impurity was slowly denied, mainly by the middle class, and Jews could integrate it easily in the surrounding. On the eve of the revolution of 1978 to 1979, the Jews were a force in the Iranian economy far greater than the numbers will dictate. Some became involved in international trade, introducing new products to Iranian public, electronically, and for example, and other main commodities. The concentration of Jews in urban areas and in certain occupations compared to Muslim led to a Jewish dominance in those occupations. Jews worked principally in trade, industry, and crafts, but engaged also in real estate. They actually took advantage of their traditional crafts and used it, but it wasn't anymore on a local level. They became international merchants, and they used all the important skills that they gained during the centuries, as being, for example, like dwellers and merchants as advantage, and they became an important component in the international trade in Iran. Numerous members of Jewish community made quick fortunes as economic activity accelerated. Many Jewish businesses were monopolized, owned by one family or usually one man. Examples of successful business people are the Elkanayan brothers, who brought the plastics industry to Iran and built the first Iranian skyscraper. It's interesting because, as you know, according to the Dhimma laws from the 7th century, Jews were not allowed to build higher houses than the ones of the Muslims. And the first high building in Tehran was built by a Jew, by Habib Elkanayan. Another successful business people were the Nahai brothers, who founded the first privately owned insurance company in Iran in 1946. Furthermore, after 1948, Israel absorbed large number of Iranian Jews from the lower economic classes, relieving the Iranian Jewish community of the burden of caring for them. In addition, since the end of the Second World War, the Iranian Jewish community has enjoyed the generous support of international Jewish organizations, which have been active primarily in general education, occupational training, and health matters like ORT, for example. On a per capita basis, by 1968, the Iranian Jewish community had become the wealthiest Jewish community in Asia and at the time. The Jewish community prospered under Mohammad Reza Shah's regime, not only in economic terms. The community's educational and cultural life flourished. It had schools, ran social and cultural organizations, synagogues, and communal associations at the local and national levels, and offered Hebrew courses and lectures. The Jewish consul, Anjomane Kalimian, which represented the Iranian Jewish community, was recognized by the Iranian government. Anjomane Kalimian operated by means of community and was engaged in communal, social, and cultural activities for the sake of Iranian Jews. The improvement in Jewish life prompted many Jews to leave the Jewish sections and move to integrated neighborhoods. The rich Jews moved to Tehran's northern suburbs. The assimilations of the members of the Iranian Jewish community, together with increasing secularization, weakened Jewish values and identity. Some researchers contended that Jewish identity was strengthened among youth generation, however, as a result of ties between Iran's Jewish community and Jewish communities in Europe and in the United States. Some of the Jewish youth moved to the US or to Europe in order to study. Intermarriages with Muslims increased in the 1970s, but still remained rarely. Iran's Jewish population in early 1979 stood at about 80,000, of whom 60,000 lived in Tehran on the eve of the Iranian Revolution, making it one of the largest Jewish communities in Asia and Africa. These Jews constitute less than 0.25% of Iran's total population of 35 million. But the Jews' presence in the economic sphere, in the professional domain, and in Iran's cultural life, this was disproportionately large. According to the unofficial estimate of a Jewish consul, about 80 Jewish professors and lecturers, that is 2% of the country's professors and lecturers by the end of the 70s taught in Iranian universities and other institutes of higher learning. There were approximately 600 Jewish physicians, constituting 6% of Iran's physicians. Of the 150,000 students in institutions of higher learning, 4,000 were Jewish, many of whom studied in the most prestigious institutes and faculties, and many Iranian Jews attended boarding schools and colleges in Europe and the United States. Some prominent examples of Jews with notable achievements are Samuel Rahbar, who discovered in 1967 a form of hemoglobin used to measure the blood sugar level in diabetic patients. Iraj Al-Azari was the dean of the College of Pharmacy in Tehran University, and you can see both of them in the picture with the Queen Farah Diba, Reza Shah's wife, at Golestan Palace. Both of them earned the Queen's Farah Science Prize. Another important figure is Homa Sarshar, who was one of Iran's leading journalists and television talk show hosts. Few Jews rose to important positions in the government, such as the attorney Yosef Cohen, who became the Jewish representative in the 25th Majlis. Iranian Jews contributed to the Iranian cultural life as well. Soleiman Haim, a lexicographer, compiled a series of bilingual dictionaries that are still considered to these days important. He also wrote theater plays based on biblical stories. A number of Jewish musicians, such as master tar player and composer Morteza Daoud and the vocalist Yona Dardashti, made significant contributions to the preservation and development of Iranian music. Some Jews were employed in Iranian cinema industry and were film producers. Some of them immigrated to Israel and assimilated in the Israeli cinema industry, like, for example, the Zevuluni brothers. There were also a few Jewish athletes who performed at the highest national level, like Hushanger Rahimiyan, a boxing champion at the end of the 1940s, and Janet Cohen-Tzedek, who was a film champion. However, the golden age of Iranian Jews, as you could see here in the gold medal that issued by the Iranian Jewish community in 1966, to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Shah, changed by the end of the 70s. You could see in this golden medal the dual identity of Jewish Iranian community. From one hand, you could see the Hebrew script, and from another one, you could see the Persian one, and on both sides, you can find Jewish symbols and Iranian symbols. On the other hand, you could see the portrait of Mohammad Reza Shah. But, however, as I said, the golden age of Iranian Jews was about to change again with the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Hope to see you soon in our next session about the Jews under the Islamic Revolution of Iran. Thank you very much.